What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Youth Church Podcast. It's Pastor Ethan, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, Nate Razzano. Let's listen to a story of how you can be in church and grow up in church, and even if you walk away, God's always there with his arms wide open. Let's listen in. Well, Nate, it's great to have you on with us today. Why don't we start off by having you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Nate. I live in Groves, Texas, have a family, married, and 3 kids, 5, 3, and 1. I've been in Southeast Texas for about 12 years now, and I've lived all over the country. I was born in California, lived in New Jersey, New York, Virginia. Got to say, Texas is by far the best so far. So,
That's right.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your life before Christ.
So I grew up in a Christian home. I was homeschooled my entire life, except for kindergarten. But grew up in a Christian home, went to church every Sunday. But when I moved out at 19, I thought I was all that, and kind of left church and wasn't really walking with Christ in that time for quite a while. And I was working real hard at work and just wasn't making the best decisions, you can say. And it was probably 2012, 2013 that I made the choice to rededicate my life to Christ. And ever since then, it's just been amazing. God has blessed us with 3 amazing children and a good job, and so I can't say,
Yeah. So hitting on that life before Christ a little bit, what would you kind of say your focus in life was during that time, in that in-between time after you moved out to where you rededicated your life?
So probably fitting in with friends, like I said, I wasn't making the best decisions, didn't have the best friends. I mean, I love them, I still do to this day, but just the choices that we were making weren't the best choices. And, I could definitely tell that something was missing. And it was kind of one of those things where you knew, but you just kept choosing to go the other way, and so selfish reasons and everything like that.
Yeah. So keeping on that same kind of topic, so where you talked about friends, is that kind of where you found your security and your happiness in life during that period?
I would say yes. Because, being homeschooled, we had different co-ops and stuff we joined, but I have 4 brothers. I'm the oldest. They always had way more friends than I did. And, so whenever I got to that point where I started getting a lot of friends, I was just, I felt like that was where I belonged.
Yeah. So we know that we can really only find that true security and that true happiness in Christ.
Absolutely.
So how do those things like friends and material things of the world tend to let us down in life?
Goodness. When you realize and remember that Christ is and should be the center of your life, you can't, as much of a good relationship you might have with your friends, you can't trust them like you can, trust that relationship you have with Christ. And so with the letdown, it's, empty promises and, I guess, influence from them, making decisions on things that you shouldn't do, but they kind of keep egging you on and convincing you to do it.
Yeah. So let's go to that time. You said in 2012 is whenever you rededicated your life. So kind of how were you reintroduced to that?
So my wife and I, we were going to a church. We had been looking around in the area for different churches and hadn't been going to church, for a while. And so it was that first Sunday that I went to church, and I just felt the Holy Spirit so strong. And I made the decision, I was like, this is, drawing that line in the sand and letting go of all those past things that were holding me down.
Yeah. So kind of like in that moment, was it like it's like everything at once, like this is it type of moment, or was it kind of like a this is it and then a gradual kind of thing?
I believe it was gradual in some ways, for sure. I didn't even have a Bible before then, and that Sunday we went to the Christian bookstore when it was still open, and got a Bible, and I just made a commitment that I needed to spend time in the Word and stay consistent with just following Christ and letting go of those things that were not of Him.
Yeah. So what kind of like led you to that moment? Like, was there things leading up to that, or was it just like, oh man, this just happened right now?
I think it just happened. There wasn't anything really like a big life circumstance or anything that kind of made me realize this is what needs to happen. It was just, we were already actively looking for a church, and even some of the previous churches that we visited, I hadn't made that decision to recommit. I somewhat still actually, I felt like I was still close, but it was that recommitment that really made me kind of, change the course of my life again.
Yeah. And then we know everything changes after that.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your life after Christ, or life after you got saved. Tell us a little bit about that. Yeah.
So, you feel definitely different, right? Just blessed, and, I can't remember like exact dates and stuff like that, but I remember when my wife and I first got married, we were trying to have kids. We knew right away we wanted a big family, and it just wasn't happening. And we somewhat started doubting. We were like, are we going to be able to have our own, or are we going to be that family that is, only has adopted children? And I think once we really started, both of us, immersing ourselves in the Word and following Christ, it was a couple years after we got married that we found out we were expecting our first child. And to us, that was like such a miracle moment, because we honestly did not think that it was possible.
Yeah. So we know that, life after we get saved, we think it's just going to be all peaches and roses and everything's going to be amazing. Yeah. But we face trials and tribulations.
Oh, absolutely.
So kind of how would you say your perspective on trials and tribulations was pre-saved to post-saved?
So, pre-saved, it's kind of like you're just living life day by day, right? And you don't expect blessings and all that, because it's like, oh, you're just doing things on your own, I can remember back, this was, 15 or so years ago, when I was still walking with Christ, but, I was making poor decisions. And I remember very specifically, I was at church. I was living in Pennsylvania at the time, and I hadn't been tithing. And I, for the first time in a long time, started tithing again. And, you hear those stories of people saying, I start tithing and the blessings just, kept coming, and I'm not one that is going to like say that's going to happen to everyone, but God blesses, in His own time, right? So, but I remember very specifically that it was not even 2 days after I made that decision to start tithing again that, these, couple reimbursement checks came in the mail, and I'm like, where are these going to come from? So, knowing God is real, knowing that He is who He says He is, that really made me realize something, was much bigger.
Yeah. So what are your kind of ways that you work through like those hard times now? Is it just staying in the Word? Is it prayer? Is it kind of just tips for young believers?
Yeah. So definite prayer and being in the Word is so important. I can say that it's so easy to get sucked into the culture of what society says culture should be, right? And it's not a popular thing to be on fire for Christ. right? Especially in today's day and age. And I can tell you right now that it's the most amazing thing. Like you don't understand how it feels until it's actually happening to you whenever you feel that closeness to him. And but it's got to be intentional. It doesn't just happen, It's not like, you just wake up one morning and you have that feeling. You've got to work for it, and you've got to make sure that you're in the Word and prayer.
Yeah. So kind of your life pre-saved, post-saved again, your character, your attitude, perspective on life, and your character, attitude, and perspective on life after. What kind of did you see was like your biggest change from then to now?
So it's funny. I've always been like a very optimistic kind of person. But my wife and I, it's one of our jokes. Like she's the realist, and I'm the optimist. Yeah. So when we do face trials, I'm usually the one that says, "Oh, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay." And there's been times in the last 10 years where I've had different career decisions, and we've been in those moments where we're like, "Oh man, how are we gonna, pay the light bill next month?" And but God always provides. And my biggest thing is just, no matter how many people will say that it's not worth it, that it's just a waste of time. You've got so many people today in, the young generation who just don't understand, and they get so caught up in the life of just self-satisfaction that they don't make time for the Word, and they won't even give Christ a chance.
Yeah. So you're in Texas now. How did you get to, what brought y'all here to Texas?
Yeah, so that's a good story. So I met my wife on Instagram, out of all places, and this was 12, 13 years ago. And so back then, Instagram didn't even have messaging feature. You could comment on someone's picture, and that was it. I don't even think you could upload a video back then. But I was my career then was online marketing, and she was one of my clients. And so we met, and one thing led to another. I was living in Virginia. I don't know if I said that or not. And she was from here. She is from here. And so I came down to visit her and her family, and a year later we were married.
And then Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
So what is your position, your title at Chick-fil-A?
Yeah. So I'm the executive director at the Chick-fil-A in Groves. I have 16 total years with Chick-fil-A. There's a gap between those 16 years where I did other stuff, but I joined Chick-fil-A in 2001 when I was 16, and I traveled across the country to help open stores, worked for corporate and did that, and then I had my home store and just moved my way up, and it was, Chick-fil-A has been such a huge part of our lives, and it's amazing.
Yeah. And now I know you're helping with Young Life in some aspect.
Yeah.
So what kind of drew you to that?
So when I was a teenager, I was in Young Life when I was living in New Jersey. And I went to camp, I went to club and campaigners and did all those things. And so Young Life has always been near and dear to my heart. And even when I moved here to Texas, I heard that there was Young Life here, and I always thought that one day I'd get plugged in as a leader. I always felt led to doing that. I always felt led to do something with the youth. Yeah. And so last year, my wife and I made the decision to become leaders. She, too, was part of Young Life when she was a teenager. So it's really cool how that all happened. And, I've known Chris, the Young Life director here, for quite a while now. And I've always said, hey, I want to do this. I want to become a leader. And it took a long time, but it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And kind of my final question before we get to that, one thing you want to leave people with is this. What is the importance of the next generation?
Oh, goodness. Yeah. It's so important, especially with the way culture is telling people how to live right now. There's only one truth, and that's Christ. Yeah. I don't like the term "live your own truth." it's one of those things that just kind of bothers me. And we need to live the one truth. And as hard as that is, as much backlash as friends are going to give you need to fight against that. And if it means breaking off some relationships, that are causing you to not be able to walk with Christ the way you want to, then that's what it means, and you've got to make some hard decisions there.
Yeah. So Nate, if you could leave people with one thing, what would it be?
Oh goodness, just get plugged in to a youth group, get plugged into a group of friends that is going to live the life of Christ, and try the best you can to read the Word, and just get connected to people who are going to help you on that path.
Yeah. Well, Nate, it's been great to have you on. And everybody, I want to encourage you this. No matter how far you go, no matter where you started from, God is always there waiting for you. He's always waiting for you to come back. And all you have to do is be willing to do that. Make that decision today. Everybody, it's been great having you listen, having you watch today. I'm Pastor Ethan, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Youth Church Podcast.